Owing to its immigration legacy, ethically and culturally, the United States of America is one of the world's most diverse and tolerant nations. The start of many trends and forward-thinking initiatives has also been attributed to the open-minded nation. In the last 100 years, U.S. society has also consciously and compassionately progressed in animal welfare and the preference for the healthier plant-based diet. Supreme Master Ching Hai has on many occasions spoken of the deep spiritual quality of this great nation.
I really respect the Americans, for their force, for their determination and their hard work spirit. Within 200 years, they built the whole nation, and so big, so vast a nation. I was always touched when I arrived in America. And the Americans were also refugees. They wanted to protect their belief. That is very noble, really. And they came with nothing. Only the brain, only the spirit, only their faithful belief in God. And look at what they have made out of this nation, out of the wildness of the big wasteland. And they have built from nothing to make it become the most powerful country on earth. And now, because their seed is spiritual, therefore they always return to spiritual. The first reason, motive for them to settle in this land is spiritual reason. Therefore, that seed never died. Yes. And because they are spiritual, therefore they can build their land so strong. Because they have built everything that they need to have a comfortable earthly existence. Now they are very much for spiritual. That's why a lot of vegetarian houses in America now. Many people vegetarian. Millions of people.
It is interesting to note that prior to the industrial era that escalated during the 20th century, meat eating in the United States was not at all common before the 1900s. Indeed, most people living in the U.S. before this age ate very little animal flesh and subsisted on a primarily plant-based diet. Today, we cordially invite you to join us on an inspiring and informative exploration into the lesser-known but venerable history of this great united nation.
Vegetarianism has actually been a vital, evolving, and fairly well-recognized movement for over 200 years in the United States.
Mr. Adam Shprintzen, PhD candidate in the Department of History at Loyola University of Chicago, USA, will be our guide today in the second part of a three-part program on our noble lineage. A vegetarian himself, Mr. Shprintzen became interested in history of vegetarianism in America when he began his higher studies in university. He quickly realized it is an often neglected cornerstone of 19th century America.
A lot of the early vegetarians saw essentially the story of the Garden of Eden as being their motivator for vegetarianism, that in paradise, that the ideal diet was all the grains and fruits and nuts. Mm-hmm. So essentially they looked back at Eden and that this paradise, and what was the best way to try to recreate paradise in their own world was to reflect the diet that existed within that world.
For this reason, early American vegetarians were active in sowing the seeds of this righteous way of living. They were active in publication writing, spoke to whomever would listen, and set up vegetarian living communes.
One of the more overlooked individuals in vegetarian history is an individual known as Henry S. Clubb, who is a Bible Christian immigrant. Clubb very quickly becomes involved with the American Vegetarian Society, speaks at their meetings. Fundamental to that is the publication of a new magazine, newsletter known as the American Vegetarian and Health Journal. Clubb decides to start a vegetarian colony in Kansas in 1855 as part of a way to sort of spread northern ideals of abolitionism into these largely unexplored territories.
The founders of the vegetarian settlement in Kansas refrained all forms of meat and stimulants like tea, coffee, and tobacco. They dined on plant-based meals consisting of vegetables, fruits, and weeds. The colony was set up so that all members could own their own property, but that as a whole, it was essentially a cooperative. These days, a stream nearby named Vegetarian Creek still serves as a memoir of the settlement that once was.
Was there a lot of literature around that could help people make an informed decision about vegetarianism?
One of the historical factors that leads to the growth of the vegetarian movement from the 1830s onwards is the proliferation of newsletters, newspapers advocating for vegetarianism. This starts with followers of Sylvester Graham, who start printing the Graham Journal of Health and Longevity in the 1830s, up until this American Vegetarian and Health Journal. These printed pieces of literature that also involve new cookbooks that pop up in the 1850s, telling people how to best prepare vegetables and live a healthy lifestyle, help spread vegetarianism away from being a more localized, individualized movement and branch it out not only throughout big cities but also into the South, as these journals made their way into people's hands, and into Western territories where people lived fairly separated lives. These journals and newsletters and cookbooks were a way of combining people together into one sort of larger community of dietary reformers that became interested in vegetarianism during the time period.
Did the spiritual aspect of it continue with these publications?
Religious and spiritual factors drove individuals to not only adhere to this diet, but also to feel as if there was sort of a greater good to it. Vegetarians are very focused on the communal good of their diet, certainly by making these choices for themselves, that they were helping society at large, and that the only way to better society was to then, of course, spread that message, because then the more people that adhere to that, the more goodness for communities at large.
When our noble lineage returns after this message, we will explore the ideals that lay the foundation for past vegetarian movements that are just as relevant in the yesteryears as they are today. You are watching Supreme Master Television.
I'm Adam Shprintzen, Be Veg, Go Green to save the planet.